Hello, everyone. Okay, so this topic is about forgiveness. And I really believe that forgiveness is like the greatest F word of all. Um, Forgiveness is something that sometimes we have a really difficult time um, embracing. It's so interesting because when we think about all of the experiences we've had, and we think of the people who've come into our lives, not sometimes, I think this happens a lot, really frequently. It's easy for us to come up with those people, circumstances, situations that we still have negative feelings about. There's a little bit of animosity. There's a little bit even if I right now as I'm talking, it's very easy for me to kind of reflect upon and come up with those individuals or those experiences that I might still be holding on to. And it's fascinating to me because I know folks individually or as individuals in my interactions and in my conversations around forgiveness. There's this notion that if I forgive, that I'm letting them win, or that I'm saying to them that what they did was an okay, acceptable thing um, to happen to me. It's interesting. Like we have to figure out, I think, as we reflect upon the things that have happened. And I'm just going to put this out there because this is a conversation. I'm getting comfortable here. This is a conversation that I have had with a lot of people around um, the willingness to let go, the willingness to truly in your heart forgive. And what folks really struggle with is that part, right? If I let go, that means that I'm saying that it was okay. If I forgive them, that it didn't matter the impact that they had in my life. Okay, that's the first part. The second part, and I think this is really interesting, and it's hard for me personally to have this conversation with others, because when I say that forgiveness, like what it does when we're holding on to the story, when we're holding on to a situation, our unwillingness to forgive the individual, right? Our unwillingness to do that is in essence giving our power away to that person. Okay. So this was a huge aha moment for me. And if you know my story, you know that I come from generational cycles of abuse in my family. It's just kind of how people treated their children. And I remember I had moved out of state and I was going to therapy. And I remember my therapist, we were having a conversation about my mom. And I remember my therapist saying something like, how much of your time, or like, well, there were a couple questions. How much of your time is spent really focusing or having experiences of your life that were affected by your childhood? Like still to this day, what kinds of things actually are influenced or affected by those early experiences of life? I was in my early 20s at the time. I think maybe I was like 23 or so. And I remember sitting on that question, really contemplating like how much of my mind space, my experience of life is deeply affected by those early experiences. Another question he asked me, and I loved this therapist. He actually looked like Gandhi. He was like the most amazing man ever. And here's a cool little side story. His name is Dr. Pugliese, Frank Pugliese. So if you're out there, you're an amazing, amazing, amazing doctor. He saw only children. And I remember going to him and I was like, it's my inner child who needs help. Like, you've got to see me. Because he had come highly recommended in the area. There weren't a whole lot of really great therapists. And he did. He totally accepted me as a patient. And I remember the second thing he said to me. It's like, it was such an aha moment for me. He says, how big is your mom, like in terms of physical size, right? And I said, well, we're probably the same size, we're not too different. And he says, so why are you so afraid of her still? You're in like two states over, and his words were, could you kick her ass? It's like, oh, hell yeah. No question. And he's like, so then why are you afraid? And he said to me, why are you holding on to the fear? Because when you hold on to the fear and you hold on to the unwillingness to forgive, you are, in essence, still giving your power away. That was a huge aha moment for me. And I think sometimes when we say to folks that forgiveness is an important part of finding peace, sometimes what gets us to wants us to hold on, that part of us that wants to hold on to that is that we haven't made peace with a couple things. I'm going to go to the second thing first, because the first thing comes to mind, but I'm going to go to the second thing. Sometimes what happens is that we struggle with what happened to us, and the notion or the idea that it happened for us really pisses us off, especially when we're talking about really horrendous things. Like really horrible things that happen to, we're talking like sexual abuse and physical abuse and rape and all of those things that sometimes are really, really difficult to release and to forgive. And then when I say, let's figure out, let's think about, let's wonder about the experiences from the lens of your soul's growth and why it may have happened. And people get, even when I'm talking, I get a sense that people get really pissed off at me because they're like, I didn't deserve that. No one deserves that. No one should be treated that way. No one, it's like, you're telling me that I called that into my own life experience. Like you're saying that, it's like that becomes really the focus. I think about in my childhood and the fear that I lived with all of the time. And it's like feeling like you're caged, and not, I don't want to compare it to like being in a cage, but it really felt like my heart was caged, and everything I did and everything I said, I had to think twice and three times and four times about, because I didn't know how it was going to be interpreted. I didn't know what was going to come at me, and living in that space of not feeling safe, which is our basic human need, um, was really, really a difficult experience for me. And so when I came to the understanding that when we have these types of experiences in our lives, it gives us the opportunity to really grow as a soul, to really practice and really step into forgiveness. Like, here's an opportunity that's presented itself to me, and I don't ever want to dismiss the fact that it was a shitty thing. It was a shitty thing that happened, and you don't wish that upon anyone, but it happened, right? It happened. And it happened, and then we've got to move into the experience of, now that it has happened, or it happened when I was 3, or I was 12, or I was 27, or I was 35, it happened. So what can I take from the experience in terms of my own healing? Like, how can I heal from this? Because when we change the lens from it being something was done to me, and change it to the situation, the horrible thing happened, right? And what can I learn from the experience? How do I grow from the experience? But for me, ultimately, it was the process of learning how to forgive. Like, I get to learn how to release all those grievances, those negative experiences, those ideas, those perspectives. And here's that first part. I said I was going to go to the second, to the first thing that came to me, and I went to number 2. So the first thing that came to me, and this was a really important thing for me, I had to let go of, I had to mourn what my expectations were. So in my case, I had to mourn, and I had to release the thought that it could be different. So I had like I said, in my particular situation, I had to mourn not having a mommy. Like I wanted a mommy. I craved a mommy. I wanted somebody who would, when I was afraid, to take care of me. I wanted somebody who, would embrace me in whatever emotional state that I was in, that I didn't feel afraid, that I didn't feel judged on a continual basis, that I wasn't, what ultimately what ended up happening is I was disowned. So it's like I craved a mommy, not a mother, but a mommy. And part of my process for forgiveness was releasing the belief that it could have been different, that it should have been different. Releasing that. And I'm going to go into the spiritual part of this. Okay. And this is what comes to me in my experience, is that at a soul level, my mother and I and other people who have come into my world that maybe I have held some grievance about, who had negative experiences, actually came together before we came into this lifetime. I do this because it's like this physical experience, this 3D experience. And we agreed. We made a contract with one another. Now, how it plays out is really up to us, right? So it didn't have to play out in the way that it did. But she agreed upon being that person for me, that I get to work on learning how to forgive. I get to learn to do that. And I'll tell you, the opportunity to forgive, and truly from a wholehearted place, it doesn't mean that I condone the experiences. It doesn't mean that I say I deserved that. It doesn't mean that I'm saying those horrible things weren't horrible things. I'm not dismissing what happened. What I'm saying is I understand the contract, and I have learned to forgive, or in the process of forgiving, and I release you from your responsibility in any part of helping me to reach this point. So it's basically, thank you for your services. Thank you for your part in your contribution. Like, think about that for a moment. And this is a really hard thing. And I know for some folks it's so hard, because it really is like, but these things happened and they were really horrible. Yes, they were. I'm agreeing with you. It was a horrible thing. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Horrible story, horrible thing. And sometimes from an emotional perspective, because the story was sad, sometimes emotion will come up again because it's a sad story. It's a sad story, and it's okay. It's absolutely okay. But what happens is that when we come to that place of acknowledging the contribution to the opportunity to learn forgiveness, the perspective changes and the energy around it changes. Does that make sense? It's like the energy that surrounds the circumstance is that I am no longer that 3-year-old victim. I am no longer the one who's fearful and uncertain. I'm no longer in that space, because I recognize the significance of the relationship and how we came together to, and there's a reciprocity, by the way. So that person, the other person who's involved, also has opportunities that may look very different than yours. Okay. But they happened, there was a reciprocity. So within that relationship, there was something in it for him or her, and there was something for me. Now, the beautiful part of this universal design is that sometimes there are deep-rooted lessons that we need to learn. And this, I get all mixed up in this because I now have new beliefs about what we have to learn. But this is a journey, right? It's a journey of getting to that place. So whatever it is that we need to learn, right, is the opportunity that I really believe that we have sort of created or expected or desired. So before again coming into this physical form, we go, these are the things I want to learn still. I want to learn how to truly be in the space of love. I want to really, truly learn how to forgive. I want to learn how to live in a peaceful situation despite the chaos that is happening around me. I want to not only recognize love as an extension, but love as who I am. Like there are all these things, right, about really coming to that place of our divine knowing and our divine being. And so part of this opportunity that we have here is really to look at each one of these experiences and go, okay, this is, or what is the opportunity here? What is the opportunity for feeling love, self-love, love in relationship with others, in union with others, of recognizing our divine selves and really sitting in that space of feeling completely and totally safe, secure, and loved. Like, here's the opportunity for that. Like, forgiveness is sort of the key to get here. Because if we're holding on to our grievances, we're holding on to anger, we have animosity towards an individual. It's like whenever we're holding on to that, you can't get to the space of feeling completely divine in your divine self. You can't do that. Those two things can't exist in the same space. So a lot of folks, what happens is we focus on, feeling good and feeling God and meditation and sitting in it. It's like we do all of the spiritual work, right? But yet there's still an undercurrent of unwillingness to really release the things that have occurred or the grievances that we hold, the ideas that we were somehow wronged. Okay. And again, I'm not dismissing the story. The story happened, but how we perceive it. And that we actually, and this is the next thing that's sometimes very challenging, is to say, thank you. Thank you for your part. And I didn't finish the last thing, last very important point I want to make is that the beautiful thing about the universe, this universal design, that is because I came in to learn forgiveness. I came in, I know that for a fact. That's something that I know I needed to do and have done on many levels. There are other opportunities that will come my way if I haven't done that yet. And even then, sometimes they come because I'm willing and ready to go at a deeper level. So I'm willing to learn. It's not really learning, it's remembering. It's uncovering that which is already present within you and within me. Okay? So we're basically unlayering that onion and we're getting to the core of who we truly are. And so the beautiful thing, and this is why sometimes we get in abusive situations or situations that are not good for us, because we haven't healed that part within us. We haven't forgiven. We haven't taken care of the part that helps us be in alignment with love. And so we then will draw into our life experiences people or situations that validate that undercurrent that has not been healed yet. Does that make sense? So you can do all of this work on the upper, kind of like on this level, but at the deepest level, if there's an undercurrent of mistrust, uncertainty, doubt, grievances, all that stuff, that undercurrent becomes sort of like the weeds then that cast the shadow onto your your experiences. And then what happens is the universe simply responds to that call because your emotional state of being and your thinking process isn't in alignment. Your thinking process, like, I'm going to do all these things because these are the right things to do, but you have an undercurrent that still is unsettled. That undercurrent, it becomes the shadow of our experiences. And again, I'm going to say this again because it's a really, really important thing. The universe will continue to respond accordingly. There's no judgment on that end. So another person comes into your life, a circumstance happens that validates that undercurrent that is still left unresolved. And this, my friends, is why forgiveness is so important. So what I say to folks is the way that we go about doing this. There's lots of different ways and lots of great thought leaders. Um, I think there's lots of modalities too that you can use, whether it be meditation, guided meditation, even therapy. Like there's lots of things to help us in the process of healing. Whatever you choose. And I'm not going to go through all of them here because, like I said, there are lots of things and you have to go with what resonates with you. But the way that I begin this journey is to really just consider for a moment. So take about 10 minutes. And what you want to do is just learn to kind of get into yourself, that emotional state of being, that sense of being, that who you are, kind of get into that space. Just simply sit and feel into you. Okay. And I want then for you to think about, so you want to get in that state first. And then I want you to think about the people, the experiences, whatever that you're still holding on to. Like what pops in your head? Who pops in your head, in your mind? Like what are the things? What are the stories? Okay. And get your journal out. And what I do is, what I think is really important is part of the process is just writing it down, just writing it down. Okay. And whether it be a journal, actually, what I sometimes will say to folks is get index cards. And I'm a big fan of index cards. I use them all the time, but get some index cards and write down one of those grievances on each card. Just one. Okay. And then the next step is, so some of us are all or nothing kind of individuals. That means like we want to jump into like, I forgive everyone. Nothing ever happened, right? And that idea that I can't do that, so then I do nothing, is what often happens. We're like this all or nothing sort of experience. So what you're doing first off is you're identifying these are the things. And I think it's getting real. It's getting honest and getting real. Now, I'm going to jump and I'm going to say something as a side here. Is it possible to forgive without going through this process? Yes. Yes. I think it's absolutely possible for us to just simply one day say, thank you for the experience I had with you. This is all energetically, this is in my, I don't have to have this conversation with an individual. Okay. So I just want to make that clear. This is me coming to terms. Okay. And if you understood energy, you'd know that you're sort of releasing at an energetic level too. So it's saying, I no longer have a need to hold on to this story any longer. And in my heart and in everything, and what I do is I imagine the individual being surrounded by white light and by love, and that I'm extending love from a neutral state. That does not mean that I'm extending love in this way, because this is not love. And I want to make this very clear. Sometimes what people will say is, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you because you just didn't know any better. You didn't know any different. So I will pray for you. What that does, and this is a really hard thing for I think some people to really recognize, is that yes, sometimes bad things happen and people do bad things, but that doesn't make you more knowledgeable or better than that individual. And especially when we start really getting into this state of awareness, where we start to recognize things like ego, and we start to recognize divine self, and we start to recognize that we get to choose our thoughts and our feelings about things. It's like we start to feel really empowered by those experiences, and we want to judge others. We want to judge others for not being there, or for being unhealthy or mentally unclear. Like we want to place judgment. Right? And then there's a superiority that happens because I now know better. Well, on the other side, in that whole spiritual realm, there is no better. No one is higher than, more spiritual than. There's none of that. And this is a really hard thing for a lot of folks to wrap our arms around, because we see bad things happen in the world. And we're like, well, how could they go to heaven? And how could they have the same type of love extended to them when they're doing horrible things? Right? It's a really hard thing for us to embrace sometimes. And so we have to remember that I am you and you are me. And so when we think about the individual who may have harmed us or have done something that was hurtful, it doesn't dismiss the fact that it's hurtful, but that we are the same. We are the same energetically, and in terms of s- spirit and God and all of those connections, we connections to the other side, we are the same, the same. So we don't want to extend love in a way of showing pity or almost again from that place of superiority where one day you'll get it or he just doesn't have his shit together, so poor him. We don't want to do that. Extending love is recognizing, and this is why that whole I am you, you are me, I am you, you are me. I practice this constantly because it is in my early experiences of life to judge. I mean, I share that all the time, that in my family, it's like everyone judges. And then you look now, especially with social media, people are giving opinion and judging and judge. Like what I think of you is more important. You know, it's like all of this crap coming flying at us around judging others. And so when we use that mantra, my mantra that I use all the time, I am you, you are me, I am you, you are me. What happens is I'm bringing my state of awareness into that neutrality, that space of neutrality, recognizing that I am no better than you. You are no better than me, that we are both divine. Okay. And so when I think about my mom, for example, and what I do is I imagine her. What initially was helpful to me, I'm going to sidestep again. What was initially helpful to me is to recognize that she did the best she knew how to do, given her life experiences, given where she was at. She did the best she knew how to do. So that was the first thing for me. That was from, going through therapy and really letting go of the mommy that I wanted, right? The mommy that I longed for. She did the best she knew how to do, given her experiences. That was my first step. The second part is then now imagining her as I remember her. So imagining her and just allowing my vision of her to be filled and surrounded by light and love. So my love, the love of the universe, the love of spirit, just surrounding her. And then the next part for me is then releasing the expectations, releasing the story, releasing all of the things that I wish could have happened and should have happened. It's realizing that I can't go back and change anything that occurred. And it's the willingness to let that go. Just let it go. And the moment I want to pull it back in, the moment I want to go back to the story, I cancel that thought and go, no, I released the need to hold on to that. And then ultimately it's the gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for showing up in my life the way that you did, because now I really get to know what it feels like. I get to know the experience of forgiveness. I get to know the experience of unconditional love. Now, this does not mean, this is really important, this does not mean that I say all of a sudden, oh, okay, you now you can come into my life and do all of those things all over again. You can have very clear boundaries that are healthy for you and still extend love at the same time. Those two things can exist in the same space. I can love you and still say to you, these are the things that are acceptable to me. And these are the things that are not acceptable to me. And in order to be in a relationship with me in this third dimensional, because we'll always be in a relationship because that's that universal design. But we, in relationship in this 3D physical form here, these are the things that I expect within that relationship. And I'd love to hear what your ideas and perspectives are too, because we get to make those decisions, but that doesn't mean that I'm still holding on to a grievance. I can extend love, and still be very clear about those things, because what that is self-love. That is self-love, is that I am willing to say what I need. The key is always it gets lost in translation. It's like how we say it, because we're still kind of coming from that place of frustration or irritation, or maybe we never learned to communicate, which is a whole different session. But it's important to recognize that those two things can exist within the same space. So my original question was, can people forgive without going through a process? Yes, absolutely. And there are some things in my life where I have absolutely just said, one day, I'm done with the story. I'm done with grievance. I'm done with feeling what I was feeling. I'm done. And then there are other people or situations where it's like, for whatever reason, I'm still holding on. So in the holding on process, this is where this activity can be very helpful. Write down, let's go back again to this, write down every grievance or person or whatever that you're still holding on to, some negativity. Like I said, I call it grievance all the time. It's like, I think it just comes from my workplace. It's like there's a grievance. I'm unhappy. And so you write those down, one on each index card. And here's what I think, this is when we start to really begin to trust our intuition. Put them all face down. Hopefully you don't have too many, but hell, if you have 40, then you have 40. It just is, right? You have 40. And then maybe as you start to work on one or two, then the others will come easier. So put them down on your table or wherever, face down, and then sort of hover your hand around it. The hovering of the hand, I do that when I'm choosing crystals. I do that when I'm choosing even some cards. It's just really starting to get in alignment with your physical body, with spirit. It's like allowing that communication to come through you and really becoming just attuned to those messages. And sometimes it comes through, for me, I hear, but that usually is the first thing, or I feel. And so in part of the feeling, you might get a sense of like heat coming from your hand. Sometimes it's cold. Sometimes your hand gets clammy, tingly. It's like everyone might have a different experience. Everyone does have a different experience. It's not might. Everyone has a different experience. When people are pulling cards and they go choose a card from one to whatever, I'll hear it. I'll hear like 2 or 6 or 5 or whatever. I'll hear it. And so don't expect the way I'm doing it is the way that you're going to do it, and the way that you're going to hear spirit. The way it's going to come through for you is going to be up to you and your relationship with your truest, highest self, or spirit, or God, or whatever you want to call that universal being. So that's why keying into your physical body and aligning our emotional state of being is such an important experience, because we're seeking our internal guidance, and that will never fail you, ever fail you. So have them on and hover your hand, and then find, for whatever reason, if you hear it, stop. I hear stop. That's when I do that, I hear stop. Sometimes you feel it, grab your card, pick it up, put the rest of your cards, boom, 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 put them in an envelope, set them to the side. Okay. Actually, what I'd say, write today's date on that. Okay. And set them to the side. Then sit with your card. And when you look at this card, and this is where you're going to tap into your imagination a little bit. When you tap into your imagination, I want you to really, and I don't say go back to the experience, because I don't want to re-traumatize you. But I want you to just sort of bring it to that surface level of that this happened. Just simply this happened. If you haven't taken my session on Take a Seat from the Balcony, this is where this awareness of being objective, so objectively awareing, and being an objective awareness, having an objective awareness is like, here's the situation. I pull myself out, and it's like I'm watching from the balcony, and so that I can see the experience that occurred. Okay, I can see the experience. So you're watching it not from an emotional reactive place, but rather from an objective lens. On the back side of your card, what I'd like for you to do is, first off, if you're still holding on to a story of feeling like somebody did something horrible to you, write that down on one side. And I would actually have you fold it. Okay. So then write that down, that part of the story right here. Okay, the emotional story. Now, on this side, I want you to write the opportunity. Why do you believe that how can this be an opportunity for you? What does it present itself in terms of forgiveness, speaking your truth, stepping into your own the love of who you are, that self-love, self-care. It might be, it could be a whole slew of things. It could be the willingness to uh, compromise, the willingness to learn to communicate effectively. There could be so many things. There's so many levels of experiences. I think some are super traumatic, and then other things it's like something that somebody said in passing, right? And so write down what the opportunity is for you. Okay, the opportunity is for you. Now, a great way, and I'm not going to go through this, to really move through this experience pretty quickly is by tapping emotional freedom technique. And I will send a link that, because there are people who do it well. Gabby Bernstein is somebody who does it well. I forget the brother and sister duo who do have books on EFT. And then there's like the people who kind of created EFT, but you can go to YouTube and there are lots of great videos on emotional freedom technique. That's a very quick and easy way for you to work through the process of forgiveness. What I do is, I've done EFT a lot, but I'm going to show you a strategy that I work on whenever I have something that I want to forgive or release. Okay. So I focus on the opportunity. So the part where I told the story, I literally start to see it as a story that happened. Okay. So I'm disengaging, I'm detaching from the experience of it being done to me. And what I start to do is look at it as a story that happened. Simply a story that happened. That's it. And the more I practice that, so I do this it's like a minute a day, not too much. I might have it where I, get ready. So, where I do my hair, my makeup, all of that. And so I have it sitting there and I don't have the issue facing out, the thing that, the person, the issue. I have the part, let me see, where's my, you won't be able to see it. So I'll have the part of the story and the opportunity facing out. Now, the first step is to look at the story and say, it's simply a story that happened. It's simply a story that happened, because I can now objectively look at it without feeling emotionally triggered by it. It's simply a story that happened. If it's helpful to you, even put yourself in the story at the age that you were. So if you were 4, it's a story that happened to my 4-year-old self. It's a story that happened to my 15-year-old self. It's a story that happened to a 15-year-old. And so you start to slowly move away from it being here to being an objective experience. This is part of that attachment piece of detaching, right? Becoming unattached to our experiences of life. And people, when I say that, they're like, why would I become detached? It's my family. It's the people I love. Yeah, well, this is one lifetime. And so, and you're going to continue to exist beyond this lifetime. My daughter's going to continue to exist beyond this lifetime. My husband's going to continue to live beyond this lifetime. And truth is, if we decide to come back into another lifetime, we may choose very different roles and positions. We tend to stay within our circle, but we may have very different experiences. That's the whole point, right? For us to grow into our deeper awareness and understanding of who we truly are. And so we create these attachments that sometimes keep us from really truly becoming true to ourselves. And so when we step out of it and we look at it objectively, we can continually remind ourselves that it was simply a story. This is what happens when we cross over. When we cross over, the story of us leaving this physical 3D experience, when we cross over, it's like, oh, that's one of the lifetimes I've had. I didn't realize that because I was in it, right? But all of our lifetimes kind of go and they come together and you're like, oh, whoa, I've had 254 lifetimes. This was one of them, my last one. And then the whole thing about whether time is vertical versus horizontal comes into play, but I won't get into that. So it's like, and a greater awareness happens, right? Because it's like, this is one particular lifetime out of over 200 lifetimes I've had. And so I can see it now more objectively. I can also see the things that I had intended to go and do. Did I do that? And then how were my actions and interactions? How did they influence and impact those that I lived with and came across, right? So we're able to, at that level, have an objective awareness because we see the broader picture. So that's exactly what I'm saying. So this thing that happened here, the story, the practice is disengaging from the story as something that happened to me, but it's simply a story, okay? And you do that, and I'll tell you when you know you're done. When you can tell the story of the person or the situation, it's usually a person, and tell the thing that happened, like the little details, without having an emotional response or trigger. Okay. I would say a reaction. So a response, the difference between reaction and response is we can think it through. We can intellectually understand it. When we have a reaction, it's an emotional response. It's an emotional, like we're still upset, we're still frustrated, we're still carrying that, whatever it is you're carrying. Maybe, again, I've talked about this before, but the jaw tightening, the shoulders tightening, and the shoulders coming in, and hands are sweating, stomach hurting, whatever it is, however you respond. So when you can tell the story without that emotional trigger, you're like, I'm ready to move on to the next part. Okay. So again, pull back and see it as a story. The second part of this, the second part is the opportunity, right? What are the opportunities? And so now I want you to revisit that, because what you may have put in on initially may not be true anymore now that you're starting this journey. So take a look at it, add or change anything, and you want to start to now rest. What I call rest is lean into. It's to sit with, to invite. Now here's the opportunity for me to speak up for myself, to speak my truth. That's my opportunity. That's what this situation gave me. This is the gift. The gift. Okay? So when you start to see it as it happened for me, and here's the opportunity, the next part of this is, how do I ensure that I'm living this in my day-to-day experiences? So how do I take this opportunity now and practice implementing that whole needing to speak up for myself, saying what my truth is, maybe learning how to speak in a way that is respectfully responsive to others while holding on to what is important to me, what is true to me. So here's where we get, again, opportunity to really step into our truest, highest selves. Okay. And so then what I do is I fold it back, because I no longer, I can still refer to it as a story if I need to. And then I set it up. You can't see it right there. There we go. Set it up so it stands, or you can do it this way, whichever works for you. And so then now it's a visual reminder for me that today I get to choose to do this. I get to choose to say what needs to be said. I get to choose, I get to choose, because the experience and the story and all of that led me to this space. And thank goodness for that. And so vibrationally, we shift. And when we shift vibrationally, the universe will respond, because that's just the way it works. Whatever you send out, it is simply mirrored back to you as a validation. Okay, so if you're still stuck in the undercurrent, that's going to continue to come in your direction. You go, see, that's why I believe these things. Well, you put that order out. You drive through McDonald's and you order a Big Mac or whatever you order, any drive-through you order, and it comes to you. You're not surprised, right? You're like, this is exactly what I ordered. I got the Big Mac, I got the fries, I got whatever. That's what I ordered. That's what came to me. And if you order something and they give you like something completely different, you're like, I didn't order that crap. Well, you kind of did at the speaker. You did. And so when, I don't know why I always go back to that story. I just think it's like, we're surprised, right? We're like surprised when something comes and And I don't know why we're surprised, because the undercurrent of our belief system is still sitting in the place of grievance and uncertainty and doubt and judgment and all those things. So when something comes in our direction and we're not honest about that undercurrent, well, I mean, don't be surprised. You simply put that order out there and the universe mirrored. So the flip side is true. If you begin to release and you start to really rest in the space of opportunity, and that there was reciprocity, and you have gratitude for that opportunity to engage that with the individual in the way that it happened, because it's simply a story, then the universe will start to respond accordingly. I hope that makes sense. I did in my own head. All right. So let me know how this works for you. Oh, I forgot to tell you how to finish this. So once you have come to a good place in this reminder, you can pull out the next card and do the same thing. Don't go in intentionally looking. Go in just randomly drawing. You can draw from the envelope, however you want to do it. And the reason is because I really, there's a, I don't know, there's like it's energy, it's magnetism. It's like you're going to pick the thing that you need. Just like, let's see if we'll do this. I never do this on one of these videos. Where are my cards? Where did I put my cards at? Oh, here they are. I cleared off my desk. So let me get my blue cards, and I'm going to choose one card, and let's see my blue cards here. And I'm just going to shuffle. And if you, I use my cards. I think I'm pretty good at listening. I'm pretty good at connecting with spirit, but sometimes I get in my own way, you know. Sometimes I want, and I will be real honest, I say to spirit, I will say, you know what? I don't want to listen to you today. Ego's in charge. My ego is so in charge today. And I think that we need to kind of laugh at that. And I think we need to kind of just own it, own it. There's no need for us to feel bad or beat up on ourselves. They're not doing that. They're not judging. They're not telling us, what is wrong with you. They're not doing any of that. We're the ones who do that to ourselves. Okay, so let me choose one. Okay, I was listening. All right. Well, this is interesting. I don't know what it has to do. Hello, folks. You're supposed to help me here. Okay, so this card says gifts of money, time, or effort. I know what that is. Okay. New career opportunities, receiving a loan, or paying off debts. All right, so I'll tell you what this is about. Okay, so any of us who have money grievances, money fears, money uncertainties, money undercurrent of money. I mean, I grew up in poverty, so I totally, like, that's something that I continually it'll show up for me, and I'm like, I haven't completely released that yet. So this is really about us becoming aware of any of our doubt of being completely taken care of, because when we fear things around money, we create those experiences, right? I just mentioned that the universe will simply respond because that's the order you put in. So this message is for us who really need to sort of release that and practice the process of releasing whatever the story is. So you're going to go through this process. Okay, so what's the story? Like, where did that story stem from? The story and the feelings around money. And it may be a situation, it may be long-term, little things, little messages, experiences. I have a friend that grew up during the Depression, and so she really has those the influence, or her parents were in the Depression, but the influence of that from her parents is really significant to this day in her life. And so it's writing that down, and then writing the story, and then writing what the opportunity brings. And so let's practice that. Okay, so let's make a commitment to practice that experience. And if you wake up one day and you say, I'm done holding on to the story, then great. Then you don't have to go through this one by one sort of thing. But if you go by this one by one sort of thing, that's okay too. All right, everyone. So I wish you well. I wish you love, and stay connected.